I was an area manager at a manufacturing operation introducing traceability for a new medical device line. 6 days before regulatory validation, the label printing supplier said its interface would be 3 weeks late. I had to deliver compliant lot traceability by the fixed validation date without lowering safety or data integrity standards. I compared delaying validation, building a temporary spreadsheet process, and creating a controlled print and scan bridge using our existing warehouse system. I mapped the minimum validation requirements with quality, tested barcode persistence through sterilization, and measured the manual bridge at 240 units an hour against the launch need of 190. I cut non-essential dashboard work, reassigned 2 process engineers, created dual verification for label release, and scheduled 3 daily checkpoints with quality and IT. The sacrifice was that 2 productivity improvements and supervisor training moved by 2 weeks. I documented that debt, named owners, and refused to defer the audit trail or exception controls. A rehearsal found operators could scan the wrong work order after breaks, so I added a line clearance step and locked the terminal to 1 active batch. Before closing the action, I sampled performance across different shifts and demand conditions, so the result did not depend on one unusually experienced team or a quiet operating window. I translated the outcome into a simple frontline mechanism with a named owner, an escalation threshold, and a weekly measure, which made the change repeatable after I stepped away. I also documented the operating assumptions, named the owner for each follow-up action, and set a clear review date so that temporary controls could not quietly become permanent. I wrote the decision, assumptions, owners, and stop conditions on a 1-page control plan so the next shift could challenge the logic rather than rely on verbal context. I used both a leading indicator and a customer outcome measure that prevented a short-term productivity improvement from hiding quality, safety, or backlog age. During implementation, I stayed at the operating point for the first cycle, asked frontline employees what the mechanism missed, and changed only 1 variable at a time. I assigned named owners for each checkpoint and made escalation thresholds visible in the shift huddle, which reduced ambiguity when I was not physically present. After stabilization, I compared the result with the original baseline, checked for cost or defect displacement, and documented the mechanism for the other shifts. Before committing, I asked a supervisor who disagreed with me to identify the weakest assumption, then converted that concern into a measurable checkpoint rather than relying on consensus. I separated mandatory controls from preferences, which let the team move quickly without weakening the safety, quality, or customer promise that the operation existed to protect. For each alternative, I estimated the likely customer impact, labor requirement, operational reversibility, and worst credible failure, and I explained why my chosen path offered the best balance. I briefed affected teams before launch, checked understanding through questions rather than attendance, and made the escalation route clear to people working outside my shift. I also protected normal operations by defining which work would pause, which work would continue, and who could authorize expansion beyond the initial controlled scope. At every review point, I compared actual performance with the assumption that justified the decision. When they diverged, I changed the plan rather than defending the original recommendation. I made the cost of the choice visible as well as the benefit, because hiding overtime, rework, or displaced backlog would have made the result look stronger but less useful. Once the immediate issue was resolved, I held a short review with frontline representatives and partner teams, captured what failed in the original mechanism, and assigned permanent actions. Validation passed on schedule with 0 critical findings. The bridge supported 12,600 launch units at 99.8% first-pass traceability, and deferred improvements finished 11 days later. The final deliverable met compliance but required 1.6 extra labor hours per shift until the interface arrived. Under deadline pressure, I protect the non-negotiable customer outcome, make sacrifices explicit, and carry temporary operational debt with an owner and expiry date.